This is Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, brought to you by the Iowa Soybean Association. Your daily recap of the information that affects Iowa's farmers, producers, and consumers, right here in the heart of the heartland. With reports from our award-winning broadcast team of Dustin Hoffman, Riley Smith, and Mark Magnuson. Now, from the IARN studios in Des Moines, here's Mark Magnuson.
Hello and welcome into Ag Matters PM on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Mark Magnuson. Today is Tuesday, May 6th, 2025, and we're so glad you can join us for today's show. In today's episode, I will be joined by Jason Meyer of agmarket.net for our closing markets. But first, we have an interview with Dustin Huffman, who is in Washington, D.C. He is at Washington Watch talking all things policy this week, and he is joined by Emily Skor. She is the CEO of Growth Energy, talking about a partnership with Hy-Vee gas stations and some rebranding of E15 pumps and changing those to unleaded 88.
Washington Watch 2025, Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, talking with Emily Skor, CEO of Growth Energy. Emily, thanks so much for talking to us here today.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so as we're talking here today, just this morning, Iowa corn growers, Growth Energy, Hy-Vee come together with a partnership to change some of the labeling, make it clearer for the pumps for for E15, rather E88 is what we like to call it. Tell us what that's going to mean and help up that confusion, maybe help clear up that confusion for some of the consumers.
This is so important. It's going to help the consumer understand what their choices are at the pump, and it's going to help them make the better choice for their fuel and for their car. We know through our work with the retailers that if you have clear labeling, it's going to be easier for the consumer to see, oh, I've got a choice here, this unleaded 88 fuel. I'm going to save 5, 10, 30 cents a gallon, and it's actually going to be better for the car and better for the environment. So very excited to be working with Hy-Vee. This is a huge retailer. They move a lot of gallons, and it's a brand that a lot of people are attracted to, but it also puts Hy-Vee in, it makes them consistent with what the retailers around them are doing. So as people go from pump to pump, from retailer to retailer, they're seeing that consistency, and that's going to give them greater confidence to be pumping with unleaded 88.
And so, you hear a lot at the gas stations, you hear over talking with the consumers, it's like, wait a minute, what's the difference between 88 and 87? What's the difference? Why is the 88 cheaper than the 87? What's the scenario? And people are honestly confused. And sometimes, and it's not to talk bad about who's selling it, but they don't even understand exactly what E88 is doing, 88 octane is doing in E15. How do we help that and help educate also those people who are working there behind the counter?
You're right. It actually takes a lot of one-on-one education to make sure the people working behind the counter understand this, people working at the footprint. And so a lot of it is working with the retailers and actually going to the sites and educating the people who are going to be working there so they know how to field the questions and how to answer the questions. So that's an important part of it too. And then also, again, just making the labeling as clear and easy to follow as possible, so that if a consumer is coming up, so many people are driven by price, so they're going to be attracted to that price savings. But they also need to understand those who are looking for something that's a cleaner option. Unleaded 88, it's engine smart and earth kind, and so we want to be able to attract those consumers as well.
The thing I find most interesting, and I still hear at these gas stations when we talk about E15, is they ask what it means, you tell them what it means, and then they say, my auto dealer says I'm not supposed to put that stuff in my car. Yeah. I've got a new car, it can't do that. Come on, you know as well as I do what the answer to that is.
There still is misinformation. Auto dealers are actually one of the prime, I would say, entities who really have some misinformation. Here's the facts. 96% of the cars on the road today are approved for E15. If your car is made in 2001 and newer, you are just fine. You're under warranty, you're just fine. And that's the vast majority of the cars on the road. So a lot of that just comes down to people are thinking this is what the market was 10 years ago. They're not familiar with the fuel. But the good news is, as Hy-Vee and other retailers, as they start to do the consistent labeling, it's going to be easier for the drivers to have confidence and understand this is a great high-value fuel choice for me.
All right, so then switching gears, we know just last week we got the approval for summertime season. Now, we know in Iowa we don't have to worry about that. But obviously, the Iowa delegation is still fighting for year-round, of course, for the whole country. How important is it, and how much are you guys tightening the screws on this Congress to get this done?
It's unbelievably important. It is our top priority. We are very grateful Administrator Zeldin and EPA issued that summer waiver last week, so we are now able to, across the country in all 50 states, drive on E15. But we can't have this Band-Aid approach year after year. The biggest thing holding back retailers from making the investments to unleash unleaded 88 and E15 across the country is the fact that they have to wait every spring for EPA to issue a waiver for them to sell it in the summer. And I will tell you, we have more congressional support, we have bipartisan support, and throughout the value chain, retailers are on board, the refiners are supportive, corn growers, ethanol producers. So we are really very vocal, we're very consistent with Congress. We need them to make the fix. And we have their support. We just need the political will to get this inserted into one of the legislative vehicles that's going to be moving now through the end of the year.
And of course, tying together with what we were just talking about earlier with the consumers, this has never been about, no one is pointing a finger and saying, you have to use this. It's just a matter of, if you want to use it, it's there and you can make it and you can have it available.
Well, that's the great thing about this fuel. It's a choice. It's giving the consumer more choice and giving them that choice year round so that they could save 10 to 30 cents a gallon every single time that they pull up to the gas station. And we all know how meaningful that savings is at this point in time. So we've got really broad congressional support. We have to stay vocal. There's a lot that they're thinking about, a lot that they're talking about. So we need the repetition. So we need to be constantly reminding lawmakers, you've got to make this fix, because that's what we need, that's what we're going to be able to do to drive demand for biofuel, to drive growth in the rural economy, and do something good for the American farmer.
And lastly, I got to ask you about 3 letters, RVO. We know, obviously, with an administration change, you've got to get everybody back up to speed, all the ducks in a row. But obviously, we are still waiting for this to get done. What is the story, and what is it going to take to get the ball moving again?
Well, of course, you have a new administration, so there is an educational period. And so we are having ongoing conversations with the team that's coming in at EPA. And Administrator Zeldin, he understands this is something that he needs to do this year. We need a rulemaking coming out of EPA that will determine what the renewable blending is going to be for 2026 and beyond. We're having really constructive conversations. What's really exciting is that biofuels are united. Ethanol, biodiesel. We are coming to the agency united in terms of being very specific. These are the volumes that we want to see. These are the volumes we can deliver. We have the capacity, we have the feedstock. And we're aligned with the American Petroleum Institute for the first time ever. So we can say liquid fuels, we have a united, consistent perspective on what we need out of EPA. And I hope in the next, maybe end of May, early June, in the next several weeks, we should see a proposal out of the agency.
All right. Well, Emily, we thank you so much for giving us that update and appreciate the efforts Growth Energy has to help out Iowa farmers and making sure those businesses for biofuels are staying strong.
Thank you.
Thank you to Emily Skor, CEO of Growth Energy, and to Dustin Huffman for today's interview. Coming up next, it is the closing markets. I will be joined by Jason Meyer of agmarket.net. But first, a word from our sponsor, the Iowa Soybean Association and the Soybean Checkoff. You're watching Ag Matters PM.
Iowa Soybean Association is driven to deliver for Iowa's 40,000 soybean farmers. We're proud to provide objective agronomic research, a helping hand with soil and water stewardship, and timely industry news powered by the Soybean Checkoff. Learn more at iasoybeans.com.
You're watching Ag Matters PM on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, and it is time now for the closing markets with Jason Meyer of agmarket.net. Jason, to start the week yesterday, had that lack of bullish news really to go off of. We saw the markets kind of in a, kind of a downward pattern yesterday. Did that continue here today?
Fortunately for the people that are long the market, that trend did not continue like it did yesterday. We still saw a little bit of weakness in the deferred months in the marketplace, but the front month corn was actually able to trade higher here, and that's July corn. And that July corn contract has never traded below that 450 level. So that was a very important area of support, and we were able to bounce off that here today.
And Jason, what did you make of the planning numbers yesterday and kind of what we could see play out because of those numbers yesterday? Yeah,
so some of the market issues that we saw yesterday with the market going down was just the rapid pace of planting. The 10-day window across the vast majority of the Midwest looks pretty wide open for planting. So guys that want to be done will be able to get done, especially in our great state here of Iowa. But you go off to the east, there's still a little bit wet in Illinois, especially southern Illinois. I think they finally are starting to see some sun today, and hopefully they'll be able to get back in the field in 5 to 7 days here.
And those do kind of sound like the problem spots right now in the Corn Belt, don't they, Jason? That far eastern portion has those wet spots. And then as we know on the western side of the Corn Belt, they're already dealing with some dryness.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of the guys that I work with in the Western Corn Belt, they're a little bit nervous. The guys that are finishing beans up are planting maybe a little bit deeper than what they normally would, just trying to find some moisture, but definitely some concern. It's only May 6th, but definitely some concern on the lack of moisture.
Let's talk about the other side of the ag marketplace, the livestock complex. What was the trade like today for cattle and hogs?
The cattle market continues its trend of making new contract highs each and every day. We saw some early cash cattle trade yesterday that kind of supported the market, but there is some concerns developing. Tyson announced that their earnings per share or their beef demand maybe is not as good because that price of beef is getting a little bit more expensive, and they were saying maybe some guys are switching from beef to pork here. And on the hog side, I just think we've had a nice little rally in the hog market, and we hit a technical area of resistance, and we just saw some more follow-through selling to the downside today on the hog market.
And to that point you made about those prices you see in the grocery store, we do know that when people have the money, they're going to spend it on those beef cuts pretty much regardless of the price. We've seen that so far. When they want to purchase beef, they're going to. But you can't help but ignore, can you, that when you go through the grocery store aisles, those pork prices just a little bit more appealing right now.
That's for sure. And is that a sign that the beef rally is over? I'm not going to come out and say that, but there's some pause for concern. But we've been saying the rally in the corn or the cattle market, is it done? But the whole industry has been saying that for 3 to 5, 6 months here. But when you go to the grocery store and you see what the cost of a ribeye is versus pork steak, maybe if you're a little bit tight on funds, you don't get that nice cut of beef here.
Jason Meyer, agmarket.net, my guest here for the closing markets. Jason, what's the best way for our viewers to get in touch for more marketing information?
Check us out at agmarket.net and give myself or one of my teammates a call.
Jason, thanks so much for the time. Always appreciate it, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Mark. Everybody enjoy this beautiful weather we're seeing here today.
Thank you to Jason Meyer of agmarket.net for closing markets here today. Let's take a look at the numbers and how the markets closed. And you can find market information under the Markets tab of our website anytime at iowaagnet.com.
July corn closes up 1 1/4 at 4.55 1/2. July soybeans down 4 1/4 at 10.41 1/4. July soybean meal down 2.50 at 2.93 even. July soybean oil down 38 cents at 48.35. Chicago wheat up 4 3/4 at 5.36 even. Minneapolis wheat up a penny at 6.10 1/2. Kansas City wheat up 5 1/4 at 5.38 even. July oats up 7 3/4 at 3.45 1/2. On the Merc, June live cattle up 2 cents at 213.67. May feeder cattle down 37 cents at 295.70. June lean hogs down $1.42 at 97.57. June pork cutout down 62 cents at 104.47. Class 3 milk up 13 cents at 18.77.
That does it for the closing markets today and brings us to the end of today's show. You can find all of our content on our website at iowaagnet.com. You can follow us on social media at Facebook, X, TikTok, and LinkedIn. And you can also listen to our morning, midday, and closing market podcast, as well as our daily episodes of our Iowa Ag Matters podcast, wherever you find your favorite podcast, at Apple, Amazon, Google, Spotify, and Podbean. From the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network studios in Des Moines, I'm Mark Magnuson. For Riley Smith, Dustin Huffman, and Andy Peterson, we thank you for watching. This has been Ag Matters PM.